how do you follow these amazing, eloquent women up here? I thought I'd be sitting on a panel, right? And people asking me questions. But, when I first got the invitation and they told me what my word was, it was community. And one of the things that I always remember and what my mentors always told me is that you don't have to script it, because you can talk about what it is that you're passionate about. And one of the things that I've always been passionate about is community. Like she said, I am a real estate broker. I've been a broker for the last 20 years, but I didn't start off like that. I wasn't a natural born entrepreneur. I was like my dad. My dad wanted to save the world, feeding people in Mexico, taking clothes, right? Doing everything that he could to do and help people, uplift them in their community, bring them over to the United States, get them jobs. My mom was a natural entrepreneur, but I wanted nothing to do with that. I wanted to be just like my dad. I wanted to go out there and save the world, right? When you're young and you're innocent and you think that one person can change the world, from very, very early on, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. But somehow, some way, I managed to fall into real estate. Needless to say, my first few years in the business were not very profitable, because when you're out there helping people and being a philanthropist and trying to be able to save the world, right? Sometimes it's not as profitable as being that hardcore salesperson and going out there and getting people in their homes. But I always approached my business with my heart, and I always looked out for people. I looked out for their best interests. I wanted them to figure out what was the best for their families. I didn't care about the money in my pocket. All I cared about was that giving spirit and that servant leadership that I always felt that God called me to do. So many years later, I started working. I was working on my own, and I had my own company, successful company, for 10 years. But one thing that was really missing from my first 10 years in my career was community. Back in the day, we didn't have a lot of Latinas in the real estate field, right? We didn't have women's entrepreneur. We didn't have women's encouragement, Women's Month. It wasn't celebrated. But I always knew that when I walked into a room full of men with investors, and here comes Maggie, this little Mexican girl, right? Daughter of immigrants. My dad was deported several times. I was the oldest. I was always trying to figure it out on my own. So I never ever had that sense of community. I never felt inclusive. I knew that I had something special walking into the room. And as you see, a lot of people are always saying oh, I thought you were taller, right, than what you seem or what it is. But I always felt tall, right? I've always been this 5-foot, daughter of an immigrant that wanted to save the world, that accidentally got into real estate. So I knew when I walked into those rooms that I had something inside of me. But there was never that community that I could ever feel part of. So fast forward to 2013, I was running my own business, but I was very lonely. And I got the opportunity to meet Eddie Garcia from Realty of Chicago. And I remember watching him because as well as doing real estate and helping families and educating them and helping them to obtain that, dream of ownership, he was out there doing turkey drives and backpack drives and volunteering for the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts of America. And I used to do that as well. But when he would do it, he would be giving out 3,000 turkeys, right, in 1 year. And for me, that really hit my heart, because I thought to myself how empty it is to be sitting in this environment and not having that community to be able to part of. So I asked him, how do you do it? How do you get the sponsorship? How do you influence so many people? How do you take a whole community and influence them and inspire them? Him being an immigrant himself. And he said, well, why don't we talk? And the rest is history. I've now been with Realty of Chicago for 7 years. And the very, very core and the reason, and I always tell him this, that the reason why I joined Realty of Chicago was because Eddie Garcia was more of a philanthropist than a salesperson. And I said, as long as you continue to do what it is that you're doing in the community, and to be able to scale it and reach more and more people on a massive level, you can count me in. Fast forward, we have grown from 20 agents to 350 agents. Our company is built on community. That is our one of the number one pillars, or the main pillar of why it is that we're successful, right? Because although I wasn't successful and I didn't have the skills of a salesperson in the beginning, I knew that I had that servant leadership, and I knew that with Eddie's mentorship that I can fuse the two together, and it is what we're doing today. We're involved with many communities. We're involved with community partners because we always talk about our communities. When I joined Realty Chicago, I met someone called Nelly Galan, and she lit that spark in me. I remember her standing at one of our events at the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, and I remember her being on stage, and this was the first woman that I ever saw take that mic and say those words to me and to everybody that was in that room, that if you want change in your communities, if you want to be able to be supported, then you needed to be the leader that stood up and became that leader for your community. And that's exactly what we've done. Not only with the culture of Realty of Chicago and being able to create this amazing community of like-minded individuals, because people that come to Realty of Chicago come because they have a passion to be able to assist others. We're not marketers, we're not salespeople, we're resources. And being involved with organizations such as the Spanish Coalition of Housing, Metropolitan Family Services, and so many others, because that really truly fills my pocket with joy.